Hey guys, welcome back to RBB. Today we're going to be talking about concealed carry and gloves. Now, gloves are great for a lot of things in your personal life. They can keep your hands warm, they can keep your hands dry.
Maybe you should wear these extra gloves. My hands are starting to get sweaty.
They can keep your hands from getting all sliced up. If they have some sort of knuckle and back of the hand protection, it can keep a very sensitive area from getting impacted and causing some severe injury. So gloves do a lot of good things, but unfortunately when it comes to shooting, gloves suck. So we're going to talk about some of the problems that gloves create when you're carrying concealed, and then how to sort of overcome those things. So stick with us. So some of you guys probably have some experience if you worked for an agency that actually paid you to shoot with gloves on, or you worked for a company where you got to train and shoot and use gloves. You're probably already ahead of the game, but you probably use something that were like super thin, like these tactical gloves you see here, where maybe they were missing a couple of fingers. In the working world, these are called framers gloves. That's kind of where they came from, but they've been adapted for tactical use because they allow you the dexterity and the sensitivity to work with your middle, your pointer finger, and your thumb. And so for those reasons, these types of gloves are really great, but they're also super thin and they're not very realistic for concealed carry. If you happen to be running around and you're trying to act like you're the gray man and you have these, you're going to get noticed really quick.
What are you, a cop?
So they're not something that you would really wear out on a day-to-day basis. More to that point, a completely covered thinner glove, which are also somewhat for tactical use, they work pretty well, and you still have a lot of good things going for you because there's still some sensitivity. You can use these with like iPhones. There's a lot of these types of gloves around. They are fairly small and they're fairly tight. And these are kind of what you would really want ideally if you were going to be out concealed carry in colder, wetter weather and you needed to carry gloves. So these aren't the only types of gloves we have to worry about. The reason why I even bring up work gloves is you may be in a situation where you're out on your property or you're in some remote area where you have to be able to defend yourself against four-legged predators. So maybe you're carrying a pistol in an area so you can access it. Maybe like on our property, we just had a tree fall and I had to go out and cut it up, use a chainsaw. But in those kind of cases, you may find yourself using work gloves. So you're going to want to know before you try to use that pistol, you may want to know how that pistol operates and how it feels using those work gloves that you're going to be using. But I will say this, if you happen to be operating out in a remote area where there are four-legged predators and you have a chainsaw, use the chainsaw. That would be cool. We also have to consider gloves that were not made with concealed carry in mind, but they do have some good qualities. And these are some of the things that you want to think about as you're buying the gloves or as you're going through the pairs of gloves that you have and you're going to be carrying concealed. You want something that is fairly tight in the palm and that the fingers are fairly appropriate. But even if you are getting out and you're getting into bigger sets of gloves, there's probably the realization that these are not going to work really well when you're trying to carry a concealed pistol. If you think about it for a second, what you end up with these larger kind of snow and snowmobile and skiing gloves is you end up with giant hands.
Good God, man. What? Ow!
So these can be a big problem, but as you are considering what gloves to carry for EDC, here are some things to think about. The first thing to consider is that any glove that you decide on is going to make your hand size larger, right? All the way around. Some gloves actually have like a palm swell, so that is going to make the grip even feel bigger. The glove fingers are going to separate your fingers more. So in the case of your regular summer or spring pistol, like a Glock 43X or a SIG P365, now you put gloves on and all of a sudden your fingers are starting to separate to the point where that grip that felt so good with bare hands, now your pinky's fallen off the bottom of the grip. And that's something to consider, is that you actually should take your gloves out and practice with them. That's the first consideration, is actually just getting a grip on your pistol and just kind of feeling where your fingers fall, and make sure that in the web of your hand, that where the glove portion is, that it's not actually wrapping on the back of, up around the back strap and running into the slide, which could cause problems with the cycle of operations. Another consideration with gloves is that you have far less dexterity and sensitivity when you have gloves on and you're trying to manipulate a pistol that you're used to shooting barehanded. One of the problems, one of the very clear problems, just with the draw to first shot, is if you've been training to a high degree, that as you're coming up from the draw, you are used to actually staging the trigger and taking out all the slack, and then getting ready to come up and just wait until your eye line is interrupted by the sight before you break the shot. That can be a problem now that you have gloves on. So that's something where in your dry practice, definitely with no rounds, even in the same room that you're practicing, you're definitely going to want to actually work with the gloves and start out, I would say, start out, just draw, come up to first shot, and then put your finger on the trigger, and then just get used to it that way. Especially if you're going to be using different types of gloves and not just one type of glove, it can be problematic to try to just go with your training model of bare hands and just staging that trigger as you're coming up to that first shot. I would actually get in the habit of, with gloves on, coming up on target, then putting your finger on the trigger. That's the safest way to go, but you definitely want to test that out. Another consideration can be not just how the gun feels in your hand and setting up for that first shot, but also getting the weapon manipulation techniques down, where you might be very proficient with the gun with bare hands, now having to learn how to lock the slide to the rear, or how to make sure that you can still hit the magazine release. That may require that you modify your technique a little bit. It may require that as you are handling the firearm, instead of trying to hit the mag release this way, you may actually take the support hand and hit the mag release before coming down to grab a spare mag, if you actually carry a spare mag when you conceal carry. Some people don't. All of these things are just draw to first shot, and then simple weapon manipulation like locking the slide to the rear and releasing the magazine. From there, you would progress to actually doing mag changes if it's a semi-auto, and then considerations like malfunction clearances, which can be kind of a problem. But if you want to be proficient and you're going to be stuck with gloves on, these are things that you have to consider when you're going through and getting ready to defend yourself, up to and including the use of deadly force. Guys, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you right back here next time on ranges, backstops, and berms.